Hello, in this video I will explain the NYA Top Caller Chart, I call it. This is the chart that I use to see if there's divergences between the NYA SPX ratio, the New York AD line, and the New York McClellan oscillator and price. So if we get, you could see the video on the NYA Top Caller for more detail, but in a nutshell, if these are headed down and prices got a line going up, that's a major divergence, and time to think about leaving and heading for the exits. Alright, so the first one is the NYA SPX. That's the ratio between the New York All ARCA and the S&P 500. Here's the New York AD line, advanced decline line, the New York McClellan oscillator. We have RSI on there. Here's the New York All or ARCA price action here. Volume. The cumulative volume. The McClellan oscillator volume oscillator for the NYA. On balance volume, even though you can't buy the NYA per se outright, I put it on there as a good indicator to keep a track of. Here's the stocks only for the NYA, so these are just the stock components of the NYA, and they call it All, New York All or ARCA, because everything is in there: closed-end funds, bond funds, credit markets, everything, all. Here's the New York Summation Index. It's derived from the McClellan cumulative of the New McClellan oscillator. I'll go back and briefly explain about all these. Here's the intermediate term volume for the NYA, the intermediate term breadth model for the NYA, and the NYA 200, which is the percentage of stocks that are above their 200-day moving average in the NYA. So the NYA SPX is comparing the ratio and performance against of how the NYA is performing against the S&P 500. S&P 500 stocks can be listed in the NYA. NASDAQ stocks cannot be listed in the NYA. So this is an interesting oscillator, as it negates the stocks inside of the NYA that are also in the SPX. So it negates those and looks at everything else against the S&P 500 performance. The AD line, advanced decliner line. Issues advancing, how many issues advancing and declining. It's going up. There's more advancers than decliners. Conversely, more decliners versus advances. The New York McClellan oscillator. It's kind of deep to talk about that. You'll have to research all these on your own for more in-depth detail. But again, we just use this looking for divergences. So I could draw a line here going down, and it would match price. We're looking for something the other way. Relative strength index. Again, you can't buy the NYA, but we'll keep on tabs on the relative strength of everything inside of it. Here's price. Volume. Good to look at to see if price is going up and volume is going down, or vice versa. You could tell how the market is behaving. Low volume, high volume. Maybe it's a holiday. Traders are out and the volume is really low, but price is going up. Here's the cumulative volume for the NYA. Here's the McClellan volume oscillator. And you can see, we'll stop here and explain this a little bit. But notice that there's a zero line, and it's above zero now. On balance volume, stocks only, advanced decline line. You could see that it almost breached the uptrend line here. Close, but no cigar. Yeah, that would have been quite an event if that would have breached that. Then it has this next one to breach. If it breaches both of those, we're in serious trouble. Here's the New York summation index of the McClellan oscillator. Now I use this, you'll see lines here around 250 above zero and negative 250. So I use this. It makes me sit up and pay attention, like over here. This is before the crash. This is probably February of 2020, before the COVID crash. So it breached 250, and then we sit up and pay attention and keep an eye on this, and then really start getting defensive when it starts breaching zero, headed down, and then when it breaks negative 250, it's like get out. And if you would have paid attention to that, you definitely would have minimized your losses. You would have been paring back some of your positions here, really starting to par them back here, and then get rid of everything here. And then the same way up here, so it breached the negative 250. I mean, you could have gotten daring and buy down here. But once it breaches this to the upside, we start buying. Breaches zero, we buy more. Starts approaching 250, we buy more, and get a little dip, we get nervous, but we're not going to do anything till it hits below zero, reaches zero again, and then really start buying after it gets above 250, positive 250. Okay, here's the intermediate term volume indicator for the New York NYA, and you can see the ITVM is an intermediate term indicator that gives a different perspective of breadth than the shorter term McClellan volume oscillator. It can also be used to notify chartists whether negative McClellan volume oscillator readings should be taken seriously. All right, we'll stop there and take a look at that. I'm going to turn the inspector on. So here's September 9th, 2020, right here. And you could see that the McClellan oscillator volume oscillator has been under zero, bobbing up and down below zero for a while as we were in the uptrend. So we'll go back to September 9th. Right here, and now we'll scroll down. And take a look at the intermediate volume. You could see it breached zero right here on the 9th. So what they're saying is, if the intermediate term volume indicator is not below zero and the McClellan oscillator is, it's something to keep an eye on, but until it breaches, the ITVM breaches below zero, then we sit up and take notice. I'll take a look at price around this time. Well, yeah, you can see it was over here and starting, and so that was the September downdraft. So yeah, we don't want to, as soon as we get a bad, it was a pretty bad down candle here, but we don't want to panic yet. But then on the 9th, so it was bobbing, up and down. But on the 9th, right here, after it had a little, on the 8th, it was down, and then on the 9th it ticked up. The price of the NYA, and you can see that it hit this. I put a line here, a horizontal line for the down peaks averages. So at that time on the 9th, it was starting to hit these two peaks here, right here, and below zero, and that's when the volume oscillator, the intermediate turn volume oscillator breached zero, and that's a good indication of a downdraft. We had it looked like it was going to go above zero, but it did not here on the 17th. And it bobbed up. The McClellan volume oscillator did go above zero, but the ITVM did not yet, so we're still waiting for a signal for it to reach above zero. And then that's when price took that dive for the rest of September. Go down and look at that. Still below zero. The McClellan oscillator didn't get above zero until the 30th. Yeah, that was about right at the end of September. And we've already had some upticks here. We'll go down and look here, and we're still below zero on the 30th. But headed up. But then once it breached above zero, McClellan oscillator is well above zero, and price is headed back up. So right around the same spot where you got out. I wouldn't trade based on this. It's just something that you can add to other oscillators. Looking at other oscillators, what they're saying is really don't panic until this is really for indicating whether the McClellan oscillator is correct when it goes below zero, not so much going up, for going down. And that certainly is what it did. Helped us here. Yeah, here's the intermediate term breadth model. Here we'll turn the inspector up. So let's see if it went below 0.2. So yeah, once the breadth model, so the McClellan oscillator was below 0, the ITVM went below 0, and the intermediate term breadth model went below 0. So yeah, that's a pretty good indication of a downdraft. And then this is self-explanatory. This is the percent of stocks within the NYA above their 200-day moving average, and I'll tell you what, it's surprising that it's been able to, it's planed out, but it's pretty steady. Whether that keeps going up or if going down, we'll have to keep an eye on that. We'll start looking at this daily. We'll throw this chart in there for a couple minutes. So definitely get a stock charts account, and they have a great learning center where you can look up all these indicators and study them. I appreciate you viewing this, and thanks for watching.